I'm going to introduce this wonderful panel. Thank you so much to Hazel and Rachel and all the women at the Alliance. I'm so grateful to be here tonight at Towson Startup. Again, I'm the lead reporter at Technically. That's me. We do believe at Technically that innovation can come from anywhere and from anyone. And so I'm so excited to be on this panel because even though we're here to talk about the gender gap, I don't see a gap here tonight because these are all really badass women who are in their fields and they're there. So they're filling those gaps. Okay, can we clap it up for filling the gaps? Awesome. Just bear with me while I pull up these women are very accoladed, okay? We all just talked in the back. They've all done some really amazing things, and I want to make sure I do justice, but I'm going to introduce them one by one, so you'll clap for them. Then they'll all come up here, and they'll all tell you a little bit more about what they do. Sound good? You could do like this. Cool. This is my wait music. Thank you. Okay. Introducing the panelists. First, we have Dr. Kaufman. Dr. Kaufman has been awarded the NASA Exceptional Achievement Medal, and she's a 3-time recipient of the NASA Outstanding Leadership Medal. She is also a 4-time recipient of the NASA Acquisition Improvement Award. She is a senior fellow on the Council for Excellence in Government, and on the way here, she had a conversation with her husband. She told me in the back. She's gonna talk more about that when the panel begins. Clap it up for Dr. Kaufman. Next up, we have Sabrina Thompson, someone who is recently in my coverage at Technically. I'm so excited to be introducing her. She's an aerospace engineer at NASA and the founder of Girl in Space Club, as you heard earlier. She is the woman behind Girl in Space Club, is a rocket scientist and atmospheric physicist. Isn't her suit very beautiful? We've also got Jen Fig from right here in Towson University. Dr. Fig holds a BFA in textiles from the Rhode Island School of Design. That's RISD. Anybody from RISD in the house? Okay, good. She's got a PhD in Media and Art Text from Virginia Commonwealth University. We have also got Alex Swartzel, someone else I've interviewed before. She's from Jobs for the Future Labs out of DC. She just came into the city as well, so welcome her to Baltimore, okay? And out of the whole panel, her lipstick is my favorite tonight. I don't usually pick favorites, but it's a good one, okay? So speaking of like beauty stuff, right? We talked about this a little bit in the back. Earlier this week, this is one thing about womanhood, right? I burnt myself with the curling iron. You can't see it because you're back there, but it's just one of those things when things don't go as planned, you know what I mean? Like you said last year when you started this event, you weren't sure how it was gonna go, but here you are at the second one and we're all gathered here. And so I wanna make sure that we give you all the space to sort of bring your humanity into the room. So I know there are things that you've done that are on the bios, but there are also things that you've done like my curling iron faux pas that are not gonna be in my bio, and I'd love if you could sort of bring that into the room. So talk to us about who you really are.
Awesome. Where would we be without our friends who understand technology, right? I think, gosh, that's such a great place to start. First of all, I feel incredibly humbled to be remotely near any of these women. This is and any of you, right? This is an extraordinary group that we've got together today. I think the way that I'll answer that question is I feel so grateful for the opportunities that my life has given me to refocus my own work and mission around economic opportunity and mobility, which is my day in and day out work. What does it look like to create a world, and especially in the United States, where every single one of us in this room, every one of us in the country, someday everyone in the world has access to a quality job that allows us to support ourselves and our families and to live the kind of lives that we dreamed of. That's what we all deserve. And way too often there are barriers in place that none of us put in place, but have to navigate day in and day out. I think it is probably especially true for a lot of us who identify as women, that just shouldn't be there. And the more that we have the opportunity to take a run at those questions is such an extraordinary privilege. And I just feel very, very grateful for having had the opportunity to work with people like Elizabeth Warren, people like my colleagues at Teach for America, who showed me what it looks like to be in the classroom day in and day out, working with young people who have extraordinary potential, but too often aren't offered the opportunities that they deserve to realize that potential. And now today at Jobs for the Future, where we have the opportunity to ask ourselves how emerging technology like artificial intelligence, like extended reality and virtual reality technologies can help create pathways into better careers, training opportunities, and even into better jobs. So I feel like just to have the privilege to get to show up and ask those questions every day, and ask sometimes would feel like very dumb questions as I'm learning this space, it's just a really remarkable privilege. So mostly I'm just grateful to be here. Thanks, Alana.
Jen, how are you showing up?
My hands are really cold right now. That's how I'm showing up.
That's fair.
Yeah, so you burnt your forehead by accident, and today is the third time that I spilt my water bottle in my bag on the way here. I just figured that was a really great entrance. I am also so thrilled to be here with these amazing, strong women and with all of you. And I really feel privileged that I am here at Towson and that I am part of a system that is working to educate and sustain a love of learning, but also the core creativity that we need to go forward in our world. And it's not just about seeing and understanding our world, but it's figuring out how to ask the questions and solve problems that we don't even know exist, not even yet, to instill that love, that curiosity to come in day to day. And while I'm in this process of helping individuals of all genders find their truth and help them navigate young adulthood, and even those who aren't navigating young adulthood, we are all looking to understand how to make our world a better place and how to ask those questions so we don't have to accept a dystopian future. We are here for a better future, for learning, for understanding, and seeing how the structure of our world and our universe continues to grow and surprise us.
I love that. And we have badass hair.
Badass hair.
Okay. Sabrina, how are you changing the world?
Well, first of all, excuse my voice. I've been using it a lot, and now it wants to, not serve me tonight. So I'm going to do my best. But I think that question is really one that I'm not going to say it keeps me up at night, but it's something I think about all the time. I think about my purpose, and I think about young people, especially young women, coming after me. I think about how I stumbled upon this career path that I'm currently in at NASA, but also what I'm creating with Girl in Space Club. And so for me, it's all about creating the possibility and showing how if it's something that you can think about, something you can dream about, regardless of the field, then there's some way to get it done. And so for me, I was told I would have to choose between art or STEM, right? And I'm creating a pathway through Girl in Space Club to show that you don't necessarily have to choose. You can do both. And so hopefully what I'm creating with Girl in Space Club could be a roadmap for young girls and just young people in general coming behind me. I think that's all I'm gonna say for now.
Thanks,
Thank
Sabrina.
you.
Dr. Kaufman, how are you changing the world?
It's a long story. I have to start with where I come from. I was born in Costa Rica, and when I entered college, I could not study what I wanted to because I was a woman. And that's what they said, you know. So I came to the United States, following my path. I took the 7-year plan to college, working full time, going to school full time. It was hard. So fast forward, I went back to Costa Rica in '98. I came to the States in '83. I went back in '98, and things hadn't changed. There were still not enough women there were not a million women in engineering. The only engineering that was ladylike was industrial engineering because it was factory work. That was it. So I got angry and I started, just knocking on doors and really kicking people's, legs and everything. We gotta change. We gotta change this country. We gotta make a difference. So I started with Costa Rica. And fast forward again, there are more women in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and all engineering in Costa Rica nowadays than because of all the work that I did. And I have extended that to the rest of Latin America. Because of that effort, the country of Costa Rica is just stamped in my honor. So I have a stamp. My face is... so... But to me, is showing girls that you can, that it doesn't matter, lose that fear, why are you afraid of,
Yeah.
And nobody was born, knowing math or STEM or anything, you can learn anything that you want to, and you can do anything that you want to. And that's been my message, to many girls and boys, because it applies to boys as well, right? I have 2 sons, so I have to speak to both. But that's how I'm trying to change the world. And locally, I do a lot of outreach as well, and I live in Arlington, and I go around, many places where they call me. And when I go to other countries, I try to do the same.
Thank you so much. Clap it up for the panel. I want to talk a little bit about leveraging technology for economic empowerment. I'm going to move my mic up a little bit. Am I loud enough? Everybody, clap it up for Mikey. Mikey with the mics. Is that good? Can y'all hear me? Awesome sauce. We're going to talk about leveraging technology for economic empowerment. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I did this earlier by picking up my cell phone and calling my mother whilst I was in Macy's. I was in Washington, D.C., and I was wondering if I should buy a pair of loafers, which I did buy and I'm wearing. I would take it off and show, do you want to see the loafer? Okay, I was trying to decide if I should buy the loafer. So I called my mom. These are Steve Madden. They were on sale. I was trying to decide if I should buy the loafer, and I was like, this is such a Woman's Day experience, being able to, call that matriarch or that friend in your family. I was like, okay, this is like my little digital technology moment for the day, because I was able to FaceTime her. And I was like, God bless whoever did this. These women have done all sorts of things on the panel themselves with technology, but I thought that was a cute little feat for myself, for my cute little feet. So thanks for indulging in my moment. But I wanted to start with you, Alex. How are you and Jobs for the Future leveraging technology? We talked a little bit a couple months ago about skill clusters and things that are happening in the job market and what's going to happen in the future and how technology will play a part in that. Could you enlighten the folks who are here?
Sure, I'll try. So
yeah.
I think the thing that I'd say overarchingly is which is something that I think is very easy for us to lose sight of and for all of us to lose sight of, is that technology is a tool, right? Like, technology is not an end in itself. Technology exists to make lives better, make the world better in all of the ways in which these tremendous women have talked about. And so I think what we've been trying to dig into at JFF, Jobs for the Future, is to understand both the ways in which technology can be a really powerful accelerant for economic advancement, but also to understand the ways in which it can be of concern, or ways that we need to sort of get ahead of it, of the way that technology is developing, and to ensure that technology is growing in a way that is meaningfully inclusive for all of us. So technology can do a lot of things, right? It can change the way that we learn. It change the way that we work. It can change the jobs that we hold. My friend Dana in the audience does an amazing job training people for technology careers. That is an incredible career path. And so we've been digging into, for instance, using tools like virtual reality, which is an incredible, for anyone who's tried it, way to have an experience that you might never be able to have. You can spend time in space, I am told, in a way that your brain translates as something that's actually happening to you. So it's a really deeply encoded experience. And so that is an incredibly powerful career navigation tool. So you can actually experience a day in the life of a plumber or a welder or an electrician or virtually any other job that you can imagine. And you can also build the skills that you need to do that job, often in sort of micro bursts, practicing a skill, whether it's what we think of as a technical skill. So how do you weld something, for instance? We've also been experimenting with what I hate to call soft skills, what are better called durable skills or human skills, which is how do we communicate with one another? How do we engage in teamwork, right? So you can actually use virtual reality to practice those skills in a very highly concentrated way. I saw, just as one example, a training where it was for frontline managers in a transportation, distribution, and logistics setting. So think like a warehouse. And it was coaching the manager on how to have a conversation with a direct report about the fact that there had been concerns about the body odor of the direct report. I cannot imagine a more awkward conversation that maybe you encounter once in your professional life, if at all. So just like a flight simulator, VR allows somebody who might not have access to, X $1,000 C-suite level training to practice that scenario 100 times and get really, really good at it. That's just one example. On the other hand, as we're thinking about work like artificial intelligence, which I've been spending a lot of time on now, there are serious questions that I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about in your own day-to-day work about how can this tool either be used to accelerate my own work, make me more productive, make me more efficient, help me learn things in new ways. But there are also big questions about, will AI take my job, right? Mm-hmm. Will it replace human workers? And that's a live issue. Decisions are being made, by all of us along those lines, day in and day out, every minute of every day. And so a lot of, I think, the way in which we have to engage with questions about this is to think about its impact on humans and to come back to where I started this extremely long answer, which is thinking about technology as a tool. And so how can we conceptualize the use of technology to unlock opportunity for all of you, for all of us as human beings in all of our flaws, originality, organic, messy, unique humanness. There is something incredibly valuable about that technology can never and should never take away. So that's a North Star that we're trying to hold on to pretty tightly.
Got it. Sabrina, you talked a little bit in the back about how your role with NASA has a lot to do with technology, but how it does require that human component because computers or technology might be unreliable in some moments, and you might even have to step in and say that's not correct. Could you talk about that and how technology plays a role in your everyday work life?
So for all of you, just to kind of give you some idea of what it means to be an aerospace engineer or a flight dynamicist. So I design orbits and trajectories for NASA. And most of these missions are unmanned missions. So they're not missions where the astronauts would be going, into orbit. So a lot of times we simulate these missions using computer software. Sometimes I'm coding different scenarios from scratch. And so just like any tool that was mentioned, right? Technology is a tool. Garbage in equals garbage out. So if I don't know what I'm putting into the tool, right? I don't know how to assess what's coming out. So although we have all these amazing tools, technology, I still need to know the science. I still need to know the math. I still need to understand the logic, right? And I still need to be able to assess what's coming out on the other end. So for me, it's still important that I keep up with my skills so that when I'm using technology, whether it is something like, and I don't use AI with, NASA stuff, but in general, when I'm using AI and things like this, ChatGPT or something like this, I understand that it's giving me a template at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's not a finished product for me. And it's the same with anything I use as far as technology for my, NASA work.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I was thinking about just the handwritten stuff that you were talking about, Dr. Kaufman, in the back, because she was saying that the job that Sabrina does used to be done by hand.
Well, hidden figures. Think about hidden figures, and the computers, the human computers. She has a computer, but she has to know how to do those calculations by hand. And so I really applaud the work that you do, because without you, we couldn't go to Mars or Jupiter or wherever we go. Thank you.
Thank y'all. And so I think it really adds to the conversation of not having to be afraid of those technologies, that we should be working alongside them. When I was reading some of the reports from Jobs for the Future, I'm seeing that it's saying that both are going to be necessary. I'm interviewing technologists day in, day out, and a lot of them are saying the same things. And I know that in your role, that you're using technology as well, but there's also human components that are present. So could you speak a little bit to what you're doing and how you're with the modeling? I'm excited to hear more about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my role as an educator, I'm trying to help people re-understand what it is to make things in this world. So I teach sculpture, which seems like, oh, it's kind of out there. But I'm actually helping people understand how is our world built, really at the basic level. And I'm finding that I'm really surprised that I am meeting so many young people who don't know what a ruler is. What are these marks on a ruler? So we're gonna go back to basics here before we even jump into the technology, into the CNC computer cutting that we can do with a plasma cutter. We're gonna understand how we're gonna use our hand and how we understand what these measurements are. As you said, garbage in, garbage out. So we need to know our real world first. So we teach them that, and then we go on to understand how the technology, in whatever form it is, whatever CNC machine it is, whether it's 3D printing or cutting or some other way of machining to get to our end result, how do we translate that as a tool, as an extension of our body? To really see ourselves in this world. The computer is an amazing tool, computers in general, technology. We need to be creators, not consumers. And so understanding when we see our little people, our children, other people's children using computers, that oftentimes they are in a closed circuit situation. They're in an app. How do we get them out of that app and into the end where they're coding the language for that app? That's where we're trying to go. That's where I'm trying to go for myself and my work. And how do we help not just our young people, but ourselves break that barrier? That's really the direction that I see our work in.
Oh, I thought you had I thought you. Can we talk a little bit, because I think maybe all three of you, or maybe all four of you, that's a tongue twister, mentioned coding. Can you talk about because we have this sort of series at Technically where we talk about how folks got here. It's called How I Got Here, isn't it clever? And so I want to talk about coding, because a lot of some people are self-taught. Some people go to, a program in order to learn something like that. But could maybe some of the folks who are on the stage who have that as a skill sort of speak to how someone might go about that? How would a young woman in the audience, or how would a woman who's pivoting learn how to code?
Sure. So if I was starting to learn how to code today, I would literally start with ChatGPT. So I would find a problem that I'm trying to solve, and I would start with a simple one, right? And I would literally, type in a prompt. I don't know, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but I would literally use that as a template. I would get in whatever language I was trying to, right? I like to use Python, so it's something that I use right now.
By a raise of hands, how many folks know what Python
You
is?
know what Python is? Okay.
Okay.
Some people are iffy with Python. They might think it's a little too slow. But for me, at least for the type of work that I do, just to, again, just do math, right? And just equations and things like this. So I would start with ChatGPT. In my case, I would want it to program something in Python. And then I would get that template and I would start changing or understanding each line by line and just going line by line, understanding it and just playing with it. Okay, what happens if I change this number? Or what happens if I change this variable? And I would use that template and then start Googling, what does this function mean? What does that function mean? And that's literally how I would start today. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I didn't have to start like this, but if I had to start today, that's how I would start.
So I just wanted to say, the first time I took programming, a long time ago, I failed the class. And that's how I started with Fortran, right? But I took it the second time, and I did well, and I learned it. And I started learning a second language, so I can say I speak multiple languages, Spanish, English, and some other languages, right? I haven't done any programming in ages, but after I got good at Fortran, I learned C, I learned Pascal, I learned, C++, assembly, because I'm an electrical engineer too, and I had to figure out how to program the computers, And, so once you learn one, the other ones are easy, yeah. And it's just learning the logic and, and understanding how that logic flows. And the rest is just, words in a page, yeah.
Dr. Kaufman, you just said something about failure. You mentioned maybe having to go through that as sort of a rite of passage before you even get to some of those successes. In the back, you mentioned that you've been present for some 13 launches. 14, excuse me, at NASA. And so can you talk about what it looks like to sort of go through the gauntlet as a woman in your field? You're in a field that maybe wasn't occupied by as many women when you started as maybe there are now. Maybe you wouldn't have been on a panel with a Sabrina, who's also at NASA 20 years ago. Can you talk about failure and success?
So as a young engineer, 36 years ago when I graduated, started working, I was the only woman in the room, and I have to admit, I had to learn to find my voice. I had to learn to deal with, I'm not going to say rejection, but it was not even a spoken thing. It was more like, the mannerisms, the tone of voices, the work assignments. And I had to learn to speak for myself, for like the very first job that I got out of college, they had me doing databases. For 3 months, I was doing databases. And I was like, well, I didn't go to college to just do databases, right? And so I went to talk to the director of engineering, and I said, hey, I got a physics degree and I got an electrical engineering degree. 3.5 years of industrial engineering, and you got me doing databases, and I think this is a waste. And I want to go into engineering, right? So he kind of looked at me and he says, okay. 2 weeks later, I was working for the engineering department. And, if I had not spoken up, I probably would have been doing databases for the rest of my career, and that would have been my experience, right? But to me, that was a moment where I learned that I have to speak up, that I have to ask for what I want to. And the answer can be no, but I have to learn not to be afraid to ask. As women, sometimes we have to ask. And also deal with some, I'm going to say, chauvinistic remarks, and put the blame where it belongs, is with the ignorant person that is making the remarks, not with me. I know what I know, and I also know what I don't know, and I ask for help when I need help. But it's not, and I don't want to call it failure, because it's more of a lesson, right? Lessons that you learn along the way, and that you just deal with them and move on, and that's that's what you do. When a male colleague makes a comment that why do we have dumb women working in here or something like that, and I had a colleague said something like that. First time you let it go, but the second time he did it to somebody else, and I couldn't resist it. And I went and talked to him. I closed the door in his office, and I said, you said this and that, and I am not going to tolerate it. You could do it to me. I get my mouth shut, but I'm not going to tolerate it when you do it to others.
Yeah.
And again, speaking up for others too when you have to, and many doors open for me, and I want to leave them open for the other people that come behind me, other women, So, but you have to be fearless in many ways and try. And as women, sometimes we have to try a little harder, because that's the world that we live in, right?
Yeah. That's what makes panels like today's so important, that we're coming to sort of speak up for ourselves in a world where that's not always encouraged. Sabrina?
Yeah, I just want to say, so they gave you databases. When I started, I was analyzing slip, trips, and falls. Right? So I came in with a master's in aerospace, and I was analyzing slip, trips, and falls. And the thing is, I didn't have the voice yet coming in. Yeah, I didn't have the voice. So there were people who were speaking on my behalf. Wait a minute. Well, first they kept asking me, people would ask me, wait, you have an aerospace engineering degree? Why are you in this department? And I'm like, I don't know, this is where they put me, right? And then, I just started, not snooping around, but just started to, they would have all these talks, and I would just go and I would meet people, and I just started networking. And then the right people just started talking amongst each other. And the next thing I knew, I was in the engineering division, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like, you learn to find the people to help you, to be your voice, right? When you don't know what to say, or you're not certain, or maybe you're still trying to learn the dynamics in whatever new space you're in, right? But then also, I think in order to, I don't know about you, but I think from the energy I get from you, I think we have the same energy. And I think in order to survive and to strive, right, in STEM, you have to have some bit of stubbornness, right? Because you're going to learn a lot of these lessons, right? And it's just being willing to learn is what's going to get you through. At least that's what's getting me through, and I think that's what gets you through too. Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about, and we could definitely chime back in on that, but I wanted to talk about the difference between being nice and kind, right? Okay, because as women, I feel like we get this very confused, especially in the workplace, right? Being nice is never wanting to rock the boat. It's most concerned with not upsetting someone. It's afraid to speak up when you witness certain behaviors. It's being worried about being liked. Let me lean over here. Can y'all see? Okay. Being kind is being willing to make waves. You're most concerned with doing what is right, willing to speak up and take a stand. And you're worried about being kind, but not nice, not the other one. And what I'm hearing from both of those stories is that you guys are being kind. You were experienced, you had what you needed to do the things that you needed to do in a certain role. You spoke up for yourself. And I want to encourage the women that are in the audience to do that. If you're in a role and you're working at Cold Stone, Layla, or like wherever you're at, and they've got you scooping ice cream, but you also know how to make the ice cream glass, then you should speak up for yourself so that you become an ice cream glass maker, or you become an aerospace engineer. Whatever the example is, just make sure you're speaking up for yourself. Alex, I know you had something that you wanted to add.
And on that point in particular, right, I've been thinking a lot about the intersection of a couple of things. One is to that point, right, like, yes, we all have to advocate for ourselves. Perhaps the burden on women, on people of color and people from other backgrounds that are not in the majority have a higher burden to do that. And that can't be enough, right? We can't leave it there. We have to figure out a way, especially for those of us that are stepping into leadership roles, to make sure that we're building organizations that make it so that either we don't have to ask, or that at least everybody has to ask at the same level, right? It's some of these same questions around this idea of failure. I feel like we have some of these overlapping conversations about we have to normalize failure, which is something that I definitely did not experience growing up. When I made mistakes at work, I was crying for days. Like, it was just the worst thing that ever happened to me. And so that doing the work of saying, okay, like you're allowed to fail, you can learn from it and move forward. For me to be able to do that, I needed a supportive environment that wasn't going to overly penalize me when I failed. Not all of us have that. And I needed to figure out this, we were talking about skills earlier, I needed to figure out the skill set to steel myself to navigate through failure, right? Much as, the conversation that the two of you must have each had to have with yourself before you go to have some of those conversations, those are tricky conversations to have with ourselves. So what I'm thinking about is, yes, absolutely, creating a space where we can advocate for ourselves and giving ourselves the skills to do that is really important. What I don't want is for the message to only be, if only more women advocated for them, no one is saying this, but if the only message that everyone is hearing is if only more women advocated for themselves or advocated more forcefully, then everything is fine. Because someone also has to listen. And it has to be okay for us to advocate for ourselves. And that's about changing organizations and changing systems in a way that none of us can do alone, but that we can all do together.
I'm totally going to build on this. I was just thinking, yes, we have to advocate, and we have to accept that failure is a critical part of creative growth, of intellectual growth. That if we don't fail, that we don't know what our end limit is. Once we discover that end limit, then we can push that limit. So that word I was thinking of while you're talking is resiliency. That we have to understand the safety and the joy of resiliency, even when it's really frightening. And on advocacy, yes, we have to advocate for ourselves. But I totally agree, it's not enough. And so I was thinking about how can we create a better world where we ask those hard questions. Hey, why is someone saying those unkind, not nice things about me? Why are they bad-mouthing? Why is this structure of whatever this institution, why is it like this? I think we have to have the resiliency to ask those questions and to keep asking those questions, and then find the people who maybe aren't listening well enough and gently tell them that they're not listening well enough to us.
Yeah.
And keep asking those questions. And it feels like after many years of asking these questions from the most complex, how do we change at an institutional level to recognize diversity as amazing and what we need, to the most basic level is why can't I get to a restroom appropriately? Why can't we have these changes in this world? And we have to keep asking the people who are in those pivotal positions to remember where they are.
Yeah.
And that they're there to make those decisions with us. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking.
Thanks for that. I want to talk a little bit. We talked about pushing forward through barriers, breaking through glass ceilings, whatever you want to call it, dealing with bullshit, whatever you want to say. Let's talk about when it's time to step back a little bit, when it's time to preserve your energy, when it's time to take care of yourself, right? I think about this a lot myself because I'm a Black woman, and Black women have different social determinants of health. There are things that we deal with, whether it be hypertension or things that we're that we have a disposition for, that I think affect our health and the way that we sort of interact with our bodies and our minds. And that happens across any woman, right? But at the same time, I think sometimes we're not thinking a lot about that when we're in the good fight, when we're having to get up every day and you're having to advocate for yourself. That's not a fun feeling. I don't know if any of the women in the audience have had to advocate for themselves, but having to say, excuse me, I don't think I'm being treated fairly. Excuse me, I don't think, excuse me, it's tiring. You get home at night, you're exhausted, your mind is winding, you're wondering what the response is gonna be the next day. You're like, it's too much. So I wanted to talk to some of the panelists about what that looks like for you. When you're pushing and pushing and pushing, and you get to that boundary, that personal boundary that you have, I know I have it. I start to feel it in my neck, my shoulders. I start to feel it when I can't sleep at night. And I know that I have to let off the gas a little bit, that I'm not gonna be able to, there are things that I'm not gonna see in my lifetime. There are certain things that I know I'm doing right now are gonna affect some little girl light years away from right now, right? But there are also things I know I'm not gonna be able to do because everything's not on my shoulders. We have to sort of share this, we have to share the responsibility. So let's talk about those boundaries, that self-care. Let's talk about when you're tired of it.
I'm
said,
like,
I got
can
this.
talk about this. I don't even remember the year. I almost tried to block this out of my memory. So I was attending UMBC. So NASA paid for me to go back to school to pursue this degree in atmospheric physics. And I was told by mentors, right, on the science side, if you really want to dabble more into the science, because I started to question, why am I designing these orbits? Well, who cares? Like, why are we going here? And, I didn't ask it like that. I asked it more intelligently, right? But the question was leading to science. And so the recommendation was to go back to school and pursue a PhD in atmospheric physics. Okay, so I was doing my full-time job as a flight dynamicist, and I was going to school full-time pursuing a PhD. And I will tell you, long story short, it burnt me out. So I passed the qualifying exam, which was one of the hardest things. Anybody here who has a PhD, that is one of the hardest things you have to do academically, right? Besides then defending, right? Right? But I was determined that this was going to work, but I kept forcing myself to do the work. And what happened was I burnt myself out. And I felt it coming. What it felt like was art. Go do art. Go draw. Go do something creative. Every time I would try to do my homework problems or something, I just had this strong desire to do something creative or to go talk to some kids, right? And so literally, I ended that fight early, meaning somebody called me Dr. Thompson today. I'm not really a doctor, right? But not yet, right? Not yet. But I bowed out gracefully, and it was very tough for me. I had to go through. Yeah, thank you for that, because it took me a while to actually accept that, right? That I left with a master's degree instead of a PhD. And it was because there were a lot of things that we mentioned here today that I was just like, I'm not. And instead, that pull toward art, I started to follow it. And being transparent, right? I took a leave of absence from work, right? So I was able to get 5 months off to figure out how do I get myself back? Because I couldn't perform at work to my ability, right? So literally I had to take some time off. And during that time, this is when the ideas, the pull toward Girl in Space, that's when it started to start to come to life. And so I will say, at the very least, you'll feel something. And for me, it was the art, right?
Yeah.
And even today, when I'm starting to feel off balance, because now I know what it feels like to be burnt out. So when I feel these tugs, I stop in place. I just stop, right?
Yeah.
Literally, I just stop. But that's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's important. And because of you listening to yourself and listening to that feeling and stopping, Girl in Space Club was featured in National Geographic last year. Girl in Space Club was featured in Essence last year. Like, you're doing amazing things, and I think there's something really to be said about listening to your gut. If any of the other panelists want to chime in about stepping back, taking care of yourself.
So for me, I guess when I was going to school, I went to school full time and worked full time. This is my bachelor's. And then when I went back for my master's, I did it at night, and I was pregnant with my second son when I finished my master's. And thank you for calling me a doctor. I don't have a PhD. I have a master's in electrical
We all
engineering.
doctor. I'm Dr. Alana now.
The University of Costa Rica gave me an honoris causa, but it doesn't count. My son is a doctor. He got the PhD. I don't. He's Dr. Kaufman. But I didn't have a choice. I had to graduate my undergraduate, and I did end up getting sick, really sick, twice. Ended up in the emergency room, and your body shuts down, and I don't know how you explain that your body just shuts down, but I had a blockage so bad. And I know it's TMI, but it was really, really sickening. I could not, the doctors were trying to help me, and it was really bad. And so and you realize that that you just cannot go anymore, and you just have to stop and slow down and figure it out. Thankfully that was the end of the semester, and I had the summer to catch up and everything. But sometimes you just push yourself so hard that it's really hard. And my outlet is, and my husband can attest to this, is the kitchen. I love to cook. I just, when I get in the kitchen and start making bread and all that, is because I'm just trying to forget about everything else that is happening around work and everything else. I come home and I cook, and it's like I put it behind me, and I just, and that releases my stress, and I feel much better after everybody's eating everything that I put together. So
I love that. Any other chefs in the audience? Cooks, people who like to cook?